Caroline Garcia's comeback is in danger, and a single leaked call may have exposed everything. The world thought she was finally rising again, until one voice note changed it all. A quiet conversation, never meant to be heard, is now echoing across the tennis world. Fans are asking, was it frustration, betrayal, or something darker? The comeback that inspired millions now hangs by a thread. Rumors of broken trust, emotional burnout, and hidden pressure swirl around her name. And for the first time, Caroline's silence feels louder than any serve she's ever hit. This isn't just about tennis anymore. It's about truth, loyalty, and survival. Because when a secret escapes, it doesn't just expose one person. It exposes a system. This is the story of how a single call could destroy a comeback, or redefine a champion. For years, Caroline Garcia was the quiet storm of women's tennis. Graceful, disciplined, and terrifyingly precise. Her rise wasn't sudden. It was earned, built point by point, match by match. From her teenage days as France's most promising prodigy to breaking into the world's top 5, Garcia carried the weight of a nation that once compared her to Amélie Mauresmo. Her 2017 WTA Finals victory marked a new era, a signal that France had found its next great champion. But as quickly as she rose, the cracks began to show. Injuries slowed her momentum. The confidence that once powered her elegant baseline game started to flicker. Between 2019 and 2021, her ranking fell sharply. Critics whispered that Garcia's time had passed, that the spark was gone. Yet behind the scenes, Caroline wasn't giving up. She was searching for something deeper than results. Balance, meaning, peace. In interviews, she hinted that tennis had consumed her life. "Sometimes you forget who you are when all that matters is the next win," she said in 2024. That confession, gentle but honest, revealed a player wrestling with her own identity. Tennis had given her everything: fame, fortune, validation, but it had also taken her sense of joy. The burnout wasn't physical. It was emotional. When she returned to competition in early 2025, she framed it as a comeback, but not the usual kind. "This is for me," she told reporters. "Not for points, not for rankings, for me." Those words were meant to inspire hope. Fans celebrated her courage, and French media framed her return as a story of resilience. It was supposed to be about rebirth, a player finally learning to breathe again. But the tennis world can be cruel to sincerity. Every serve, every expression, every loss is dissected by millions. And when Garcia fell early in tournaments, the optimism faded fast. The same fans who once called her France's pride began turning against her online. Anonymous messages flooded her social media, death threats, gambling insults, mocking her mental weakness. The pressure that had once broken her spirit was back, sharper than before. Then came the whispers. A leaked phone call, said to involve Garcia and a member of her team, surfaced online. No one knew where it came from, but what people thought they heard was enough to ignite chaos. There were hints of conflict, frustration about unfair treatment, mistrust within her camp, maybe even regret about the comeback itself. No official statement confirmed its authenticity, but the damage was done. Tennis forums exploded with speculation. Had Garcia said too much? Was someone close to her leaking private conversations? Even tabloids joined the frenzy, suggesting tension inside Team Garcia and mental strain behind the comeback. It wasn't just about her results anymore. It was about the mystery surrounding her truth. For Garcia, who had fought to regain peace, this was the last thing she needed. She had already spoken out about toxic betting culture, saying after her 2024 U.S. Open loss, "The abuse we receive online, it's not normal anymore." Now it seemed that even her private words weren't safe. Her comeback, meant to heal old wounds, was suddenly at risk of reopening every one of them. And the line between what was real and what was rumor began to blur. Was this just another twist in a complicated career? Or the start of something much darker? Because if the leaked call was real, it didn't just expose frustration. It hinted at a truth the tennis world wasn't ready to face. That behind every comeback story lies a storm of doubt, pressure, and pain. And for Caroline Garcia, That storm was about to hit harder than ever. It started as a whisper, a quiet rumor on tennis message boards, buried between highlight clips and match stats. Someone claimed to have heard a private call involving Caroline Garcia. At first, no one paid attention. In a sport where gossip travels faster than serves, rumors were just part of the noise. But then, a few lines from the alleged recording appeared online, and the silence that followed was deafening. The call, according to early reports, was between Garcia and a close confidant inside her training circle. The clip was short, grainy, barely 2 minutes long. But what was allegedly heard was enough to spark a storm. A voice, believed to be Garcia's, expressed frustration with how her comeback was being managed. "I feel like I'm being used," the voice said. "No one listens when I say I'm not ready." Those words, raw, uncertain, human, hit like a grenade. Fans began dissecting every syllable, every tone. Was she talking about her team? About the French Tennis Federation? About sponsors? No one could be sure. But one thing became clear. Caroline Garcia, the calm, composed competitor, might be fighting a battle much deeper than her results on court. Tennis journalists scrambled to verify the source. Major outlets like L'Equipe and Reuters refused to publish the audio, citing ethical concerns, but confirmed that an internal inquiry was underway. Meanwhile, on social media, the clip spread like wildfire. "If that's really her, it explains everything," one fan wrote on X. "She's been pushed too far." Another post, more cynical, said, "Excuses again. She's always the victim. The timing couldn't have been worse." Garcia was preparing for her indoor swing in Europe, the same surface that once made her champion. Instead of focusing on training, she found herself dodging microphones and questions. "I don't comment on rumors," she told reporters with a tight smile. But her eyes told another story: exhaustion, hurt, maybe even fear. For a player who had rebuilt her confidence brick by brick, the leak was a wrecking ball. Everything she'd tried to protect, her privacy, her peace, her new sense of purpose, was suddenly public property. She had already endured waves of online abuse from gamblers who lost bets on her matches. After her U.S. Open exit in 2024, she had spoken out, "It's destroying people's mental health. We are not robots." Now those same dark corners of the internet were weaponizing her voice. Somewhere in the chaos, the truth got lost. What no one mentioned was that the call, even if real, might have been taken out of context. One of Garcia's former coaches, speaking anonymously to RMC Sport, said, "Caroline is emotional. When she's frustrated, she vents. That doesn't mean she's giving up." But nuance rarely survives online. The world wanted scandal, not understanding. Sponsors began asking questions. The WTA issued a vague statement emphasizing respect for player privacy. But by then, the story had already spun out of control. Headlines framed it as betrayal, manipulation, even conspiracy. Garcia versus her own team read one headline. "The call that could end it all," said another. Inside her camp, trust began to crumble. Who recorded the call? How did it leak? The walls that once felt safe now felt like glass. Every phone, every message, every conversation carried suspicion. The comeback that was meant to restore her love for tennis was now shadowed by paranoia. And yet, amid the noise, one truth remained. Garcia's voice, trembling but determined, was real. Whether she was confessing vulnerability or confronting control, that moment revealed more about her than any trophy ever could. Because sometimes, the real battle in sports isn't against an opponent across the net. It's against the expectations, the contracts, the endless noise demanding perfection. Caroline Garcia had come back to play for herself. But now, it seemed, the world wanted her comeback to belong to everyone else. And as the storm around her grew louder, the question echoed across the tennis world. Who was really pulling the strings behind Caroline Garcia's fragile return? The morning after the leak, tennis Twitter was on fire. Clips of the alleged call were everywhere, reposted, remixed, analyzed frame by frame. Headlines screamed Garcia meltdown exposed and inside the French star's secret call. Within hours, hashtags like Garcia leak and tennis scandal were trending. For fans, this wasn't just about a match or a player. It was about betrayal, control, and the fragile humanity hiding behind professional perfection. Caroline Garcia had built a reputation for composure, the player who rarely showed emotion, who smiled even through defeat. But this was different. This was unfiltered, emotional, and real. The world wasn't used to seeing her vulnerable, and the reactions were split right down the middle. Supporters rushed to defend her. "She's human. She's allowed to feel broken," one fan tweeted. Another wrote, "This is why I love Garcia. She's not fake like others. She's honest." But others weren't so kind. Trolls flooded her comments, mocking her mental strength. Some gamblers even claimed she faked stress to justify losses. One post read, "She's done. No mental toughness." The call proves it. The conversation grew uglier by the hour. Players like Ons Jabeur and Coco Gauff subtly voiced support without naming names. "Athletes deserve privacy," Gauff posted on her story, followed by a heart emoji. The message was clear. The tennis world was watching, and they understood how damaging such exposure could be. But the media machine didn't stop. Outlets dissected every line from the call, spinning new theories daily. Was her team divided? Did she regret returning? Was there pressure from sponsors to continue? Garcia stayed silent. For days, she didn't post a word, didn't appear for interviews. The only thing fans saw was a simple Instagram story. A photo of her racket bag zipped shut, captioned with 3 words, "Still standing strong." It was quiet, almost defiant, but it couldn't drown out the noise. Behind the scenes, her agent and PR team scrambled to control the narrative. They reached out to platforms to take down the recording, but once something leaks on the internet, it's nearly impossible to erase. And with every re-upload, the speculation grew darker. Some began claiming the call revealed more than frustration, that it hinted at deeper fractures in her career, unfair pay, sponsor manipulation, even internal pressure to play through injury. None of it was confirmed, but the hunger for controversy was insatiable. Journalists began comparing her case to Naomi Osaka's 2021 mental health struggles. When Osaka withdrew from tournaments citing press pressure, "It's the same playbook," one commentator said on Eurosport. "A woman speaks her truth and suddenly she's unstable." The comment struck a chord. What if Garcia's story wasn't a scandal, but a symptom of a system that punishes emotion? Meanwhile, French tennis authorities were caught in the middle. The French Federation publicly supported Garcia, calling the leak a violation of privacy. But internally, officials worried about image damage before the 2025 season. Was this controversy going to stain the country's top player's reputation? Or worse, scare sponsors away from women's tennis altogether? For Garcia, the emotional toll was beginning to show. During her next match in Lyon, she walked onto the court with a stiff expression, avoiding cameras. Her performance was shaky. Every missed shot felt heavier, like the weight of public opinion had crept into her swing. When she finally lost in straight sets, a reporter shouted, "Caroline, are you okay mentally?" She didn't answer. She just walked off the court, head down, bag slung over her shoulder. And that image, Garcia walking away in silence, became the symbol of the storm. It was reposted thousands of times, captioned with everything from sympathy to sarcasm. Some saw defeat, others saw resilience. But everyone agreed on one thing: the comeback that once felt hopeful was now drowning in controversy. The question wasn't whether she could win matches anymore, it was whether she could survive the noise long enough to rediscover her love for the game. Because sometimes, in the world of professional tennis, the real opponent isn't the player across the net. It's the world watching from behind their screens, ready to judge every breath. When the noise became too loud to ignore, Caroline Garcia finally broke her silence. It wasn't through a press conference or an interview. It came through a late-night social media post. A black screen, white text, 10 words that captured her exhaustion. Privacy should not be a privilege. It's a basic right. Within minutes, her post went viral. Thousands of comments poured in, messages of support from fans, journalists, and even fellow players who had faced similar scrutiny. But for every voice defending her, there were others trying to tear her down. "If you can't handle pressure, quit," one user wrote. Another added, "Leaks only hurt when there's truth inside." The backlash had reached its peak, and now it wasn't just about Caroline anymore. It had become a debate about the boundaries of fame, the cruelty of fan culture, and the growing problem of privacy invasion in women's tennis. Sponsors were nervous. Brands associated with Garcia quietly requested crisis management meetings. The French Tennis Federation was forced to issue another statement, calling the leak a severe violation of ethical conduct. But privately, insiders worried about her mental health and the possible collapse of her comeback season. A single leak, real or fabricated, had derailed months of effort. Garcia's schedule began to change. She withdrew from a smaller event in Prague, citing personal reasons. Rumors immediately followed. Some said she was taking time to heal. Others suggested she was in conflict with her management. And once again, no one had answers, only assumptions. Then came the second wave of controversy. A journalist from L'Equipe revealed that an internal recording investigation had been launched within Garcia's team. It wasn't just about finding who leaked the call, it was about understanding how deep the betrayal went. Someone close to her had broken trust. A teammate, a friend, a confidant. The betrayal wasn't abstract anymore. It was personal. Imagine working with people every day, trusting them with your life, and one of them records you, said a former WTA coach during a podcast discussion. That's the kind of thing that can end careers, not because of tennis, but because of the heartbreak. Caroline's public image began to shift. No longer just the victim, she was becoming a symbol of invasion, of resilience, of the modern athlete caught between vulnerability and performance. Supporters began using the hashtag #RStandWithCaroline, comparing her battle to Osaka's and Swiatek's previous fights for mental balance. It wasn't about one player anymore. It was about how the tennis world treated its women when they showed emotion. But the internet is rarely kind for long. As sympathy grew, so did conspiracy. Some claimed the leak was staged, a PR move to gain attention before her next tournament. Others speculated that sponsors leaked it to manipulate her image. The irony was cruel. No matter what she said or did, her truth was no longer hers to control. During her next appearance at a charity event in Paris, Garcia finally spoke to the media. Her tone was calm, her eyes steady. "I've learned that not everything that breaks you has to define you," she said softly. "What happened? It hurt. But I still love this sport and I'm not done yet." Those words, quiet but resolute, changed the tone. The narrative of scandal began to fade, replaced by one of perseverance. But inside her world, things were still fractured. Some of her team members were replaced. Training sessions moved behind closed doors. Her circle grew smaller, tighter, cautious. For the first time in months, Garcia looked determined again. But it was a different kind of determination. Not the hunger to win trophies, but the will to reclaim herself. And yet, even as the storm began to settle, one question remained unanswered. Who recorded the call, and why? Because in a world built on competition and fame, the greatest danger doesn't always come from rivals on the court. Sometimes it comes from the people standing right beside you. Weeks turned into months, and the chaos around the leaked call began to quiet. But the silence felt uneasy, like calm after a storm that had already done its damage. Caroline Garcia was back in training, away from cameras, away from microphones, and for once, away from noise. What the public didn't know was that behind the scenes, her team had been reshaped from the ground up. The investigation had concluded. The source of the leak, according to private reports, had been identified, and it came from within. A close acquaintance, someone Garcia had trusted deeply, had recorded the conversation during what was supposed to be an off-the-record discussion about sponsorship expectations and performance anxiety. The recording was later shared accidentally with a journalist contact who, sensing opportunity, leaked fragments online. What followed was not an exposé, but a wildfire. When the truth finally came out, Garcia didn't name the person publicly. She refused to play the blame game. In a rare interview with Tennis 365, she said quietly, "I've learned that when someone betrays you, you have two choices: carry the anger or carry the lesson." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were steady. That was the new Caroline, scarred but unbroken. Still, the world wanted more. Fans expected a full statement, an apology, an explanation. But Garcia chose silence over spectacle. Her only message was simple: a caption under a training clip on Instagram. "My comeback isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving myself right." That post marked the shift in her story. What had started as scandal began transforming into resilience. Sponsors, once cautious, quietly returned. The WTA expressed admiration for her composure, calling her handling of the situation a model of professionalism. Even her critics started to soften. Because beneath all the headlines, one fact was undeniable. Caroline had refused to crumble. She returned to competition in Madrid, playing with a calm that looked almost defiant. No dramatic celebrations, no emotional outbursts. Just pure, focused tennis. Every swing seemed like an act of defiance against the chaos that tried to define her. She didn't win the title. She didn't need to. Her presence alone felt like victory. In the post-match press conference, she finally spoke about what the last months had taught her. "It's strange," she said, "how people expect you to break. But sometimes breaking is how you rebuild. I've realized I don't owe anyone my piece anymore. I just want to play." The room went quiet. Reporters wrote furiously. It wasn't just a comeback. It was a transformation. Yet even in truth, mystery lingered. The full contents of the leaked call were never officially released, and questions about who benefited from the scandal remained unanswered. Some speculated it was orchestrated to distract from internal WTA controversies. Others believed it was simply a personal betrayal blown out of proportion. But to Caroline, it no longer mattered. She had faced public humiliation, betrayal, and emotional exhaustion, and survived. And in doing so, she reminded the world that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet, steady refusal to give up that defines a champion. Her journey became more than just about tennis. It sparked broader conversations in the sport about player privacy, mental health, and the exploitation of emotional vulnerability for clicks and profit. What happened to Caroline became a warning, but also a lesson, because the truth was never just about a call. It was about control. Who gets to tell your story when the world demands your pain for entertainment? Caroline Garcia chose to take that control back, and as she stepped back onto the court, head high, the whispers finally faded. The same audience that once doubted her now watched in quiet respect. Her comeback wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. There are moments in sport that transcend the game, moments that reveal the person beneath the athlete, the truth beneath the story. For Caroline Garcia, this was that moment. What began as a promising comeback had turned into one of the most testing chapters of her life. A single leaked call had dragged her name through uncertainty, distrust, and public scrutiny. But from that wreckage, she built something far stronger: authenticity. The storm had stripped away the layers, the sponsors, the scripted interviews, the curated perfection. What remained was a woman rediscovering her purpose, her boundaries, and her self-respect. For years, Garcia had been defined by expectations. The next French great, the future of women's tennis, the player who should win more. But now, she was rewriting that definition on her own terms. She began speaking more openly about the darker side of the sport, the pressure of constant judgment, the silent battles players fight behind polished smiles. In a heartfelt conversation with a French magazine, she admitted, "The hardest opponent isn't across the net. It's inside your head. And when that voice becomes too loud, you stop hearing yourself." Those words resonated deeply with fans around the world, especially young athletes who had watched her struggle in real time. Caroline's story became a mirror for something bigger: the growing conversation around mental health, emotional honesty, and the brutal expectations placed on women in sports. It wasn't just about her comeback anymore. It was about the countless players who never find the courage to speak up. And for the first time, Garcia wasn't running from vulnerability. She was owning it. As she returned to tournaments, the atmosphere around her began to change. The same crowds that once whispered gossip now applauded her strength. Journalists who once speculated on her downfall began framing her as an example of grace under fire. And when she spoke, people listened, not for scandal, but for sincerity. During an emotional press conference at Roland Garros, she was asked how she managed to keep going after everything. Her answer was simple: "Because I love this game, and love is stronger than fear." That quote spread like wildfire. It wasn't dramatic or defensive. It was pure truth. It reminded everyone that comebacks aren't always about trophies. Sometimes they're about finding peace in chaos. The legacy of this controversy will always linger in tennis history. The leaked call became more than a scandal. It became a catalyst for change. It forced organizations to re-examine how they protect players' privacy and mental health. It reminded fans that behind every highlight reel is a person who bleeds, doubts, and dreams. And for Caroline Garcia, the lesson was profound. The comeback that once seemed in danger had evolved into something far more meaningful. It wasn't about rankings anymore. It was about reclaiming her voice in a world that tried to silence it. The truth, in the end, wasn't dark. It was liberating. The darkness had simply been the backdrop against which her resilience shone brightest. As her racket cuts through the air again, there's a different energy now. One born not of pressure, but of purpose. Every swing feels lighter, every smile more real. She's not just fighting to win anymore. She's playing to exist, to feel, to inspire. And as the final chapter of this saga closes, one question remains. Was this just a comeback? Or the rebirth of Caroline Garcia herself? Caroline Garcia's journey reminds us that even in the darkest moments, truth and courage can rewrite the story. Her leaked call didn't destroy her comeback. It defined it. If you believe her story deserves to be heard beyond the headlines, hit the subscribe button, join our growing tennis community, and stay with us as we uncover the untold stories behind the game, where every serve hides a secret and every comeback carries a cost.